seeing as it was -1 degrees Fahrenheit this morning in Boston when I woke up. Certainly comfort food seems like the thing to have, and so make one of my favorite dishes, a French dish called cassoulet, and this is a pretty multi-day event project, but there are some ways that you can shortcut it, and we can talk about that as we go along. So the first step in this recipe is we are going to take 1.5 pounds of cannellini beans, and soak them in water overnight, and that will help the beans plump up. And then what we need to do is we need to get some duck legs, and we're going to confit the duck legs. So the first thing we're going to do is salt cure them, and these are some beautiful duck legs from Maple Leaf Farms in Indiana. It's a company that's been around since the 1950s, and I've used their duck before. It's fantastic. This is available in a lot of grocery stores around the country. This comes frozen in the frozen section, and if you go to their website, we'll put a link in the description, you can actually, there's a store finder, and you can find who carries their duck in a store near you if you'd like to try it. They also have their own online store, so you can actually order it and have it shipped direct to you. One of the ways that you can shortcut this recipe is they actually do sell duck that's already been confit and pulled, so you can just go ahead and skip this whole step if you would like to and move right on to the rest of the meal, which will probably save you a day of preparation. So first thing we got to do is create the salting, and I have here 1/2 cup of kosher salt, so I'm going to put in a bowl, and to that I want to add 2 tablespoons of sugar, and just mix those together to combine. And we're also going to, right now, get together the things that we're going to use to layer the duck when we put it overnight. So I have here a teaspoon of black peppercorns. I have a teaspoon of juniper berry. I have about 14 pieces of fresh thyme. And I have 2 large garlic cloves that have been chopped. And the first thing I'm going to do is take the hard spices here, the juniper berry and the peppercorns, and I'm going to put them into my mortar and pestle here, and this is going to, I'm just going to crunch these. You also could put these into a little plastic wrap and use a pan to do this. This is just going to release some of the flavor of them. So I'm just going to pulverize it just a little bit. And now I have that ready for layering. So first thing we're going to do is take the duck legs, and you want to take this salting and sprinkle it all over and rub it in. And you want to do this over a plate, so when you have some, you'll have some excess and that will just fall off into the plate. But you want to rub it all over the skin, all over the flesh of the meat. Get a good coating on top of that. And then we're going to layer that into a glass dish. Okay, and then we're going to layer these ingredients over the top of the duck that's in here. So I'll get some of my thyme, some of my peppercorns, some of my garlic, duck on top of that. And then we're going to cover this tightly with plastic wrap and put it in the fridge for 12 to 24 hours. And then we can move on to the next step, which will be to cook the duck in its own fat slowly to let the meat pull off the bone. And we're continuing on our Valentine's Day extraordinary meal. Working on a cassoulet. As you recall, yesterday we soaked about 1.5 pounds of beans overnight. And we also, at the same time, started the process of our confit of duck. So first thing we're going to do is get a pot for the beans and add our soaked beans to the pot. Then we're going to put in the pot with the beans 2 carrots that have been cut crosswise. Then we also have 2 whole cloves, not garlic cloves, cloves. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick those into the onion halves. This is going to make it easier for us to retrieve this after the beans are done. So we're going to take a whole onion, cut in half, put it in there with the beans. We also have 1 large bay leaf, which I've broken into some small pieces. Going to do about 3 sprigs of thyme in there with the beans. We're going to take a whole head of garlic and we're going to cut it across, and we're going to put that in there as well. Then we also want a 1/2 pound of pancetta or bacon. So in this case today, it's snowing in Boston, there was a run in the grocery store and the pancetta is all gone. So this is some beautiful thick cut dry rubbed bacon that I have here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into smaller sort of bite-sized pieces and put that in the pot with bacon, with the beans. All right, so we have all the ingredients in the pot, and I've put it over a medium-high heat. And what we want to do is we want to add some water to it, and we want it to get submerge the beans by have at least a couple of inches of water over them. So that should be pretty good right there. We're going to bring this up to a boil, then we're going to turn it down to simmer. And we want to simmer it for probably about 45 minutes. We're going to partially cover it, and we want the beans to be tender but not falling apart. So we'll test for it after about 45 minutes. We'll test one and see how it is. You might want to, about 30 minutes in, you might want to add just a little bit of salt to the beans. And right now, I'm also going to add some fresh pepper to the beans. And now we got to take the duck and get it ready to put in some of the duck fat. So the idea here is to take the duck legs and submerge them in duck fat and cook them slowly for 1.5 hours, 2 hours until the duck falls off the bone. So what I have here is some duck fat from Maple Leaf Farms. They're the same company that produced these beautiful duck legs. And this is something you can get directly on their website or in certain stores. If you want to check their store finder on their website, you can see who has it. But this is an integral part of doing this the authentic way. So here is the legs that we started confiting yesterday. And what we want to do now, and you can see that all the salting, what it's done is it's allowed some of the juice, some of the liquid water to come out of the duck. You'll see it's floating in liquid now. And so what we want to do is sort of scrape off the herbs and spices and salt to the best of our ability with a paper towel. And then we're going to put the duck leg into a pot that has some of the melted duck fat in it. And so again, we'll adjust to make sure that these duck legs are fully submerged in the fat. You can discard the rest of the ingredients here in the trash can after you're done. We're not going to use it for anything else. So as you can see, it's not quite submerged, so I'm going to give it a little bit more duck fat to get it all the way up over the top. So you'll see here now we have the duck in the pot with enough duck fat to cover it. We've gotten it up to a simmer. You got to watch this carefully and not let it get too hot and too bubble over, but we're going to leave it here at this temperature for about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. You'll see the meat will start to actually pull off the leg. The meat will get much darker, and at that point we'll take it off the heat and put it aside for assembly later on in our cassoulet. Okay, our beans have been cooking for about 45 minutes, and so now what I'm going to do is get in here and test one and see what the doneness is like. So it looks like they're pretty soft, and I think they're done. So now what we want to do is shut the heat, and we want to pull out the carrots and the garlic and the onion. All you want remaining in here is the beans and the bacon. And we're going to let this cover this, let this cool to room temperature, and put it in the refrigerator and save it for putting the cassoulet together. You can do this ahead of time if you want, and put the beans away and chill for a few days until you're ready to make your final dish. Alright, so our duck's been cooking for simmering for an hour and 45 minutes in duck fat. And if you look at it, you'll see how the duck is falling away from the bone here. So that is all done. So I'm going to shut the heat underneath this and let this cool to room temperature. If you want to store this overnight, if you want to put together your cassoulet the next day, then you could just let this cool to room temperature, put the whole thing in the refrigerator with a little duck fat to cover it. And then the next day you can pull it all, bring it all back together to create the cassoulet. All right, continuing on our cassoulet. The next step was we need to make our pork ragu. This will be our third and final element in the cassoulet. And to prepare this, we need 1.5 pounds of pork butt. And you want to dice that into about 1-inch chunks. The absolute size isn't as important as having it all be consistent. What we're going to do is also season this with a little salt and pepper. So I have kosher salt and some pepper. And I've preheated a Dutch oven with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And we're going to cook this in batches in the oil. Get it good and brown. Alright, so you'll see now that I've browned the pork on all sides. It's nice and brown, and this probably took about 10 minutes. So we want to remove this to a plate. And then we want to get our next batch of pork and add it and do the same thing. And we're going to turn the heat down to medium. And then in this fat, we're going to add 1 onion chopped, 2 carrots chopped, and 4 cloves of garlic chopped. And right back into the pan again. And you want to cook this for 8 to 10 minutes until everything is good and soft and a little bit brown. And then we're going to add back our pork and the aromatics to this. So now we've been cooking our onions and carrots and garlic for about 8-10 minutes. If I push down on a piece of carrot, I can see that it's soft. So now what we want to do is add back our aromatics. So I have here 1 bay leaf and 3 sprigs of thyme. Add that to the pot. And then to that, we're going to add a can of tomatoes. If you have fresh tomato, that's great. But it is winter in New England, so we are going to make use of 1 16-ounce can of crushed tomato. And finally, I'm going to add 6 cups of chicken broth. I have here some nice homemade broth, but do use a low sodium broth if you're going to use a store-bought. There's a lot of salt already in this dish, so we don't need to add more to it. we're going to bring this up to a boil. We're going to let it simmer for about an hour and 3/4, or we also need to add the pork back into here now. And after about an hour and 3/4, we're going to check this and look for the pork to be sort of break apart when you push on it. So bring to the boil, hour and 3/4 at a simmer. Now that my ragu is cooking, I'm going to come back to my duck confit legs, which I had actually created yesterday and put in the refrigerator overnight. So I've heated them back up to get the oil, the fat liquidy again. And I'm going to take one of the legs out of here and let it drain a little bit. And we need to pull the meat off the bone. And the other thing we need to do is we need to take, as best we can, I want to get the skin off of this bone and reserve that. And what we're going to do is we're going to fry that and use it to top the dish when it's all said and done. So carefully remove that skin. And there we have it. I'm just going to put it on a paper towel for now, and we can put this aside in the fridge until we're ready to use it towards the end of the meal. And then we want to come back to the leg. You'll see that the leg pulls apart nicely, and what we want to do is take this and pull it into shred it into strips of nice duck. And when you're done, put it back in the fridge and reserve it until we're ready to put the final cassoulet together. Okay, our ragu's been cooking for about an hour and 45 minutes, and the way that I know that we're ready to move on to the next step is if you take a little piece out of here, see how easy that breaks apart with my spoon. So that means it's done, and our next step is to add our beans that we made back into this pot, which I have right here. And so what we want to do is get a slotted spoon. And we're going to pull the beans and bacon out and put them into our pot with the ragu. Now you also want to reserve the liquid because you may need it later on in the cooking process if you lose some liquid in the oven. Okay, I'm going to give this all a stir, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Our next step is to put a 8-quart casserole, a heavy-bottomed pan on low heat on the stove, and we have the duck that we skinned that we reserved from our confit of duck. And what we want to do is put those into the fry pan and cook them very slowly. What we're going to do is brown them. And we will eventually cut those into small pieces so that we can put them on top of our cassoulet when it's ready to serve. And this is going to probably further render a little bit of fat, and then after this is brown, what we're going to do is we're going to take our pork sausages and cook them in this duck fat to give them some special flavor as well. Okay, you'll see now that my duck skin is golden brown, and so what we're going to do is we're going to move that back out to a plate, and you can blot it a little bit over the top with a paper towel to get some of the excess grease out. And now you'll see in the pot we have here some extra duck fat, which will be what we cook our pork sausages in, which is our next step. Okay, so I have over here a pound of Italian sausage, pork Italian sausage. You want to go ahead and prick those with a fork. And then I also have garlic sausage, another pound of garlic pork sausage. This is actually garlic and herb, which is good enough. You just want to have something that's garlicky in there. And we're going to take those and put them into our pot here and fry them. For about 10 minutes, you want to turn them, get them sort of brown on all sides. And we're going to remove those and cut them into coins. Alright, so my sausages have been cooking for about 10 minutes and got some brown on them. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove these to a plate, let them cool slightly so that we can cut them into coins. And what we're going to do next is we're going to put our breadcrumbs in here and cook them in this fat and liquid to give the breadcrumbs some nice flavor as well. So I have here 3 cups of breadcrumbs. If you can get a medium coarse, that would be great. I'm going to dump that in there, and then we're going to give it a good stir. And what we're going to do is we're going to let that brown in there for about 10 minutes, keeping moving around. And hopefully there's enough liquid in there to cook all these breadcrumbs. But if not, you also could add back a little bit of duck fat, a couple tablespoons of duck fat if you wanted to. I'm going to stir this all around and continue to move it around and let it get brown. Alright, so I've been moving around these breadcrumbs in the pot for about 5 minutes, and you want to keep going until you start to see a nice golden brown sort of throughout. So I think we've achieved that now. So what we want to do now is remove this to a bowl and let it cool slightly. And we're going to chop about a 1/4 cup of parsley, and we're going to integrate that into the breadcrumbs and use that on top of the cassoulet. Now, along with our cassoulet as a starter, we're going to have a salad course. So we're going to do a nice mixed salad with roasted beets and goat cheese. And so we're going to go ahead and take advantage of the oven, which is on for the cassoulet. I have here some golden beets, raw golden beets, which I've peeled and sliced into 1/4-inch slices. And I'm going to take my Cassis de Waldo olive oil. I'm going to use the piqual, and I'm going to put some olive oil over in a bowl. And what we want to do is we want to toss the beets nicely in the olive oil. We also have here about a tablespoon of chopped fresh thyme, and I'm going to sprinkle the thyme into the bowl along with the Alright, we're going to take the beets and we're going to lay them off onto a cookie sheet. Alright, so I have the beets laid out on a non-stick cooking sheet. I'm going to sprinkle some sea salt over the top and a little pepper. And we're going to put this into our 375 oven to start cooking while we finish assembling the cassoulet. So the next step with the cassoulet, so we have all of the elements here. Next thing we want to do is we want to take our sausages that we cooked a few minutes ago, and we want to slice them into 1/4-inch slices. And we'll put that into a bowl, and we'll have all the things. We're going to put the beans together along with the duck and the breadcrumbs. Now we're finally at the point where we can assemble the cassoulet and get it into the oven. All the elements have been prepared. You really could have done all of this ahead of time if you wanted to, and the day of simply put all the things together and baked it in the oven to finish the dish. So to me it's a fitting Valentine's Day dinner because, as you can see, this is a true labor of love, but it's absolutely fabulous. If you've heard of the slow food movement, to me this is the ultimate expression of slow food. So here's what we're going to do. We have our ragu and our beans together over here, and I'm going to ladle about 1/3 of this into the bottom of my casserole. Make sure I get all beans. And then we want to take half of our pulled duck and sprinkle it over the top of the ragu in the pot. And you want to follow up with half of the sausage on top of that. As you can see, there's lots of goodies in here for your mouth to enjoy. So I do about half the sausages sprinkled over the top. All right, and then we're going to ladle another 1/3 of our ragu over the top of that. All right, and then on top of the other 1/3, we are going to put the rest of our confit of duck across the top. And the rest of our sausages. And finally, we can put the rest of the beans. And now we're going to top it all off with the breadcrumbs. You only want to use 2/3 of the breadcrumbs. You're going to save 1/3 for the very, very end. So take this and sprinkle over the top. You'll see that I stirred in some parsley, about a 1/2 cup of fresh parsley, Italian parsley into here. And this is going to form in the oven a nice crust over the top of this. And what we're going to do is every 25 minutes or so, we're going to check it. If it's a nice golden brown on top, what we're going to do is we're going to poke some holes in it so that some of the liquid can get up over the top. And then at the very end, we'll use the last 1/3 of the breadcrumbs to give it a solid bread, toasted bread top. This is going to go in a 375 degree oven and set the timer for about 25 minutes and have a look, and we'll go from there. All right, we just took our beets out of the oven, about 45 minutes at 375. And what we want to do now is we want to take them and move them to a cutting board and cut them into pieces so we can put them on top of our salad. So I just simply cut them into chunks or squares. And then we also, at the same time, need to make a vinaigrette dressing. So I have some red wine vinegar with a couple cloves of garlic in there. I'm going to add to that some salt and pepper. And just want to give a squeeze of Dijon mustard. Give that all a quick mix together, get the mustard integrated in there. The mustard is what binds the dressing, so when we add the olive oil, it will all come together. I'm going to use my Cassoulet de piquois and slowly whisk that into my dressing. There we go. Red wine vinaigrette. We have some greens here for the salad, and we're gonna next toss the greens with the salad dressing and chop up my goat cheese, and we're gonna put a little bit of the goat cheese in the salad when we're tossing, and we're gonna put the rest on top along with some beets and make a nice presentation. Now we're ready to assemble our salad. So I have here a fresh goat cheese log, which I've chopped up into little bits. I've chopped up all of the roasted beets that we had. And I'm going to take some of the goat cheese and go ahead and put it in the salad now. And I will toss that with it. Same thing with the beets. I'm going to put a few of the beets in there. And we'll save some to put on top. I have my red wine vinaigrette. Give it another mix. Put that in. Give it a good tossing. Okay, take some out and nicely on the plate. And I'm going to take a little more of my goat cheese and sprinkle it over the top. And finish it off, just a little salt and pepper over the top. With some toasted walnuts. This is optional, but nice. Have some crunch in there as well. And that's it. That's our salad. Okay, you'll see here our cassoulet is bubbling a little bit from the side, so what we want to do is you want to break some holes in it to allow some of that to come up through. And we're going to let it continue cooking now. So now got our second check of our cassoulet. You'll see it's bubbling up again. And so now we're going to take the rest of our breadcrumbs, sprinkle it over the top. We're going to let this have one last final brown, and then we'll be ready to serve. All right, my masterpiece is finished. See, it's got a nice dark rich brown. It's bubbling over the side. Now to finish it, We're going to scoop it into a dish, make sure everyone gets a little bit of the breadcrumbs with it, and we're going to top it with the fried duck skins that we prepared earlier. We're going to let that cool for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about the wine we're going to serve with this. This is a Chateauneuf de Pape. It's 2018, and this is from Famille Brunière. It's a very nice wine, made with 80% Grenache, 10% Syrah, 6% Mourvèdre, and 4% Cinsault. It's a beautiful blend, and it's a special wine that I think is just right for this special occasion. So now we're going to get a good metal spoon and break down into the crust. And make sure you dig down deep and get all the good stuff that's been layered down in there. There's our duck, our beans, everything. And then you want to top it just with a little bit. The duck, I call them cracklins. That's it, there you have it. Cassoulet, made the right way, from scratch, with some Chateauneuf de Pape for Valentine's Day.